So we are still in the principle of kelim. That kelim come from the oil, but alidei dover achi, by the effect of the oil being touched by something outside, something else. And the motion for this is oisius of sechel. Every sechel has oisios through which the sechel can be contained and expressed. As we discussed this principle, but we have to understand that these oisios that do express the sechel are not oisios, do not spring out of the sechel itself. They're not rooted in the sechel. There is a means by which you can put the sechel in oisios. And the principle that you put sechel in oisios is when the sechel is being viewed from an outside source. This is what brings out the means of oisios with which to present it. These oisios that represent the sechel, at the point when they represent the sechel, they are unique to this sechel. In other words, if a sechel is presented correctly in words, there is no excess, there is no extra word, there is no extra letter. It is precisely representing everything in that presentation has to do with this sechel. That is only because the oisios are fitted to the sechel. Because the sechel is the one that reveals these oisios. But nonetheless, the oisios are not derivatives from the sechel. Because if they were derivatives from the sechel, then he says, then every sechel would have oisios unique to it. But it's not like that. Oisios are interchangeable between one sechel and another sechel. What then is the means by which oisios come? When this sechel is brought down to an external place where there is not that knowledge, then oisios come forth with which to present it. So we are on the line that begins ve-ahnu roim she'ein kein, and that is 7 lines from the end of the top section on page Yud Ches. We see that this is not so, meaning that the oisios are unique for this sechel. Oisios have general function. Elo, but rather she'ein ha'oisios min ha'sechel. The oisios are not from the sechel. Rak, except she'boyim alidei ha'sechel, they come forth, they reveal through the sechel. And this is why, because they come through the sechel, this is why the oisios are so perfectly fitted to the sechel. So on the one hand, it is perfectly fitted, but it's a fit. It's not something that is actually a derivative from. So the similar Indian, this was all a mashal from what we spoke about before, which is not brought down to the nimshal. The similar thing, mihisabus ha'oir. As we said, mihisabus ha'oir, from the thickening of the oir. Thickening of the oil we already discussed. Just a brief recap, so we should understand the terminology and refresh. Oir is a direct emanation from the Yetzim, from the source. Oir does not have a presence of its own. Oir is constantly pointing to the source. The correct way to refer to sunlight is sunlight, not light. There is no material of light. There is sun, and this is sunlight. But it is not a separate thing. And yet, and therefore it is completely bottled to its source. But then, this light, as it progresses, it has external effects, and therefore there is a union from his abus oil. But the oil becomes thickened, which means it becomes closer to being an entity unto itself. Shehu bechinas hagbala shebei, which is the aspect of hagbala, aspect of a boundary and definition within the oil itself. Shalidei harshim, that is brought forth as a result of the rishim. The Rishimu, we briefly discussed it, again, just to put things in perspective. Eventually, this Ayin from the Rishimu I'll be discussing in a richer way. Rishima means a trace, which means if you have something written, and then you erase it, it leaves a trace that something was previously written here. Now, what is, if you have a blank piece of paper, and something was written on it, and then you erase it. Now there is a trace of the fact that something has been written. What is this Rishima allude to? I know it's an unfair question, but I'm asking the question so that we would think together. What does this allude to? Now, a blank piece of paper is a perfectly clear piece of paper, pure. It does not in any which way allude to anything written on it. It has no writing, it has no specific message whatsoever. When you said that there is a Rishimu, which means that, yes, it does remind you of the fact that this paper is there for the purpose of presenting letters and words, of being written upon. There's much more to say, I just want to bring it straight to the Rishimu. This Rishimu, even though it's clear, nonetheless, it already alludes to the opinion that this is not a blank piece of paper. You can use it, you can write anything you want on it, but to begin with, it has already a definition, not an identifiable definition, but clear it's a definition. So therefore, I'm skipping around just one or two. Therefore, when you look at this, when you shine light on it, you're shining light on, not on a pure piece of paper. You're not shining light on something which was totally without definition. There is already a demand for further identifying what's in here, what was written here before. This creates what's called hisavos ha'oir. Oir, normally we said, oir points to the Etzem, to the pure truth. This one, it also points to the pure truth, but not in a pure way. It says, but there is a specific message there, inherent in what the oil reveals to you, which is called hisavos ha'oir. That there is a thickening, which means there is a certain defining and limiting quality to it. This brings about kelim.
Yeah, again, like, yeah.
Why was I saying? No, you stay. So this is immediately, so to speak, the Shabbos Oir. This immediately makes a statement that this Oir is not just to be Oir, but it is there to make a statement, to reveal something, which means it has already some kind of an inherent limit and message. And that nizeh nizhabu hakelim. From this hisabus, this lowering and hagbola in the oir, this is where the kelim come from. What is the Indian of the kelim? When you are relating to the pure oil, then you do not need kelim, because then the reality of the oil is, as I said, is the moir is the source from which the oil comes. But once the oil has an inherent message, an inherent definition, then you cannot take it from the source itself, because in the source there are no issues.
There are no what?
There are no issues. Then you have kelim. Kelim means this is the means by which this oil is translated on a lower level, on a functional level. If you say, like I give you my muscle, a blank piece of paper and a paper that has a reshima. A blank piece of paper does not allude to any kind of a finite message. What is a blank piece of paper? Anything you want to say is there. What you don't even want to say, anything that is real is real. But if it has a trace of writing, then clearly it is not anything. It is certain specific things. If it's certain specific things, then there is the kelim. We discussed kelim, throughout this discussion. But kelim is what brings the spirit to a concrete stage, to a stage where it can be identified independently of the source. Like we said, what is a keli? When is a cup qualified to be called a keli? Not while it's being used by the person, but when it stands in the closet. When it's being used, it's really part of the oil. Yes, sir.
When you say that the reshimi is pointing to something, the reshimi is the reshimi of oil. What's the difference of the reshimi oil than the oil itself?
Because the reshima is oil shelifnei hatzimtzum. Because in Atmos itself there is everything. On a completely different level. So when there was a tzimtzum, this everything has left a reishim, and the reishim is just an allusion that there is everything, but not in any kind of a specific manner, because that's what the tzimtzum is.
In our mashal, the Rishimu came from somebody's specific markings that were then erased.
Right.
In the Nimshal, the original marking coming from...
Let me try and get us a little bit of a handle on this. Because the whole principle of oil, we have to discuss it quite extensively. Like we said, that there's a human presence. The human presence does not require that you should say anything or do anything in order to make a mark. In order to recognize that there is a human presence. The very presence itself is already sufficient to make the full impact. The full impact. Now, like I said many times, let's think of it this way. You have a home, and there's a human being in this home. Human being and home, as you said many times, is a very close relationship. But in a human home, it's not going to be emptiness. There's going to be furnishings. Because the human being represents more than just a home, but all his functional elements are also represented in his home. Because a human being has functions, has a purpose. Not just to be, but to accomplish and to do. These markings, so to speak, these furnishings, even though they are entities unto themselves, but really they are completely representative of the human presence in this home. But this representation is at a lower level than the essence of the home itself. As we said several times over these weeks, the Gemara says, "Odem shein bayis ein odem." One who does not have a bayis is not a man, but never says if he doesn't have a table, he's not a man. Although a table is definitely a perfectly human element. No other creatures needs a table, or identifies with a table. So, if this human being moves out of the home and he leaves a trace of the fact that there was a human dwelling over here prior, despite the fact that it goes back to to undefined state, nonetheless, what this home is about has already been defined, has already been can be identified, and therefore this is not the pure oil as it was previously. The oil that's shining on this Rishimu is an oil that is, so this is called thickening of the oil, an oil that brings out certain definable elements. As we said in this moshel, that there's a difference between identifying a home, the essence of a home, or the functionality of the home. Both of them are human. But once you identify it with functionality of the home, it's a much lower level than the home itself, the essence. The essence points directly to the essence of the human being. Functionality points to the human qualities.
The Rishima was pointing to...
The Rishima brings out in the oil the thickening, the qualities, rather than the essence.
It originated before the Tammuz.
Right.
In the mashal, when the person is living in the home, that's pointing to the essence of the home. It's not just but what's the essence of the home in the mashal, the pure light?
The pure light is that we're saying that Odom Shein and Beis in Odom. It simply defines the reality of a human being. Not functional, a presence. Like we said many times, that before the human being came on the scene in the world had no significance whatsoever.
Okay. So here we're having these kalim, these specific functions originating higher than etzem, higher than
Right.
tzimtzum.
Right.
Okay.
That's in the moshel also. So the oises are really inherent much higher, but when they come down begilu, then they become real oises, with which we can grasp the Inyan. To be revisited. Okay. Right now, at least we have translated. They have translated the principles here. Let's continue a bit further. B'shorsham ho'amiti. B'shorsham ho'amiti. And the true shoirish, the true source, root, shel ha'kelim, of the kelim, hu mehorshim. The real source of the kelim is from the rishim. Because what is kelim? Kelim is the means to take the oil in various manners and bring it to a stage where it becomes an entity unto itself and can stand on its own. This is from the Rishim. Now, you asked, what is the significance of the word Rishim? Okay. Here's the important thing to answer your question. When you have a fully written page, When you have a fully written page, this, nobody's going to say, oh, there's a whole bunch of letters over here. What is there? A thought. What's being told them? What does this represent? What is the neshama element in this? When you erase this and all you have is a trace of it, what do you have? A trace of the letters. Where the thought itself is no longer accessible. But there was here a thought. And there wasn't a thought in the form of that, in a graspable manner, in a definable manner. This is Pshat, the Kelim is rooted directly in the Rishima, which means that the Kelim are alluding to the oil that can be grasped.
That what?
It can be grasped. Because as long as this is representing mamash, a full human thought, you don't have a cake. You're relating to the thought itself, not to the oisius. To take this further on the human level, when a person speaks, he speaks words and letters, or is he speaking an idea? You could speak words and letters, but then you are a robot. You're not really speaking it's not a human being speaking. When it's a human being speaking, he's speaking a human thought. And he puts it in words that somebody should be able to hear it, not that because he's speaking the words and the letters. Like we said, 1 and 1 is 2. If you say 1 and 1 is 2 once, you understand the difference? Then you're talking letters. When you say 2, you're not talking letters, words. You're talking about some kind of a human concept. And that only a human being can understand what you're talking about. It is sechel talking to sechel via certain sounds. So as long as it has a full message, the whole phenomenon of letters and words is completely lost. Like we said many times, Shabbos, if you carry a morsel of food on a plate, the plate is totally unobtrusive. Doesn't count.
If two people were talking to each other and one conveyed the idea of 2 and the other one understood him, the kelim are insignificant.
Totally insignificant. The kelim there, in that conversation is, what are you thinking about? Not what is the reality of this. So we say that the Rishima, the shoydesh ha'amiti of the kelim, the true shoydesh of the kelim is the Rishima. Which means that what in fact are kelim carrying them? They're carrying a limited sechel. a sechel as it is separated from the source. That's what the Rishima is. The Rishima is when you have markings, but they don't convey a message.
That's the regime.
Right. Because if they convey a message, then it is, again, it's sechel. And the whole Metzius, the Alevis, is completely lost. All right, here's where we have to stop.
Yeah.